can all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. If you're just coming in now, if you can grab a couple chairs here. Is there anyone on a chair or a bench that's comfortable on a cushion? If you are, there's some cushions here. We're just trying to keep everybody from piling in the back. Thank you. Appreciate it. We're doing our best to not have 40 people crammed into a tiny little space. All right, good morning, everybody. How are y'all doing today? Good. What brings you here? Who's here for the first time? Anybody? Why show up here? I said, why?
I've been into Buddhism for a while, and it's just the first time being like a community.
Nice. We definitely could have picked a better community than this one, but we're not a bad place to start, you know? What brings you here? Trying to what? Quiet the mind. Who's been doing this practice a long time? Anyone quieted their mind yet? You have that to look forward to. What else? Who's new? I know now you don't want to play, but go ahead. What brings you here?
Meditation.
Meditation? Yeah. Is this brand new to you, or are you
Not
advanced practitioner?
Yeah. I was here a long time ago, but it's a long one. New again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the beauty of this practice is we're new every day.
Yes.
We're always starting over every day. That's the whole idea, is that whatever went on this morning, done. Yesterday, done. 5 years ago, done. So we're starting over every moment. And especially with the Zen practice, the beginner's mind, we refer to it as, each moment you sit in meditation, you're sitting as if you've never sat before. It's the first time you're ever sitting. So just keep that in mind, especially for those who are maybe kind of in that, like, well, I've been at this for 6 months or 2 years, and my mind hasn't quieted yet, or the stuff isn't working yet. I suggest to not approach this as, is this going to work? Because then what you're doing is you're tying some expectation and some goal to meditation practice. And if you're tying an expectation or a goal to your meditation practice, you're in essence defeating what the practice is about. The practice is simply learning to be present with life as it is. And there is no there's no expectation to set from there. There's just sitting and breathing. And, sometimes we feel better when we sit and breathe. And those of us who've been at this a long time know that sometimes when you sit, you don't necessarily feel better after. Right? Anyone been in a really bad mood and done a meditation and then afterwards you just feel worse? It can happen. Because when we sit quietly, what are we left with? Our thoughts. And what's what drives us crazy all day long? our thoughts. So with that, let's go ahead and sit with our thoughts for a while. Because we always love that so much. To our millions of followers online, good morning, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Feel free to introduce yourself, say hello. There's a chat box somewhere on your screen. Meditation practice, a couple things I'll tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. Meaning, don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside the room. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. This practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you aren't, on a cushion, often it helps sliding to the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Same thing if you're on a bench or a chair, just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders. Ideally, feet are flat on the ground. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever's comfortable. If you need to move during meditation, simply move. Movement doesn't make you a bad meditator. It just means your leg hurts or you have an itch, so feel free to move. Most important with this practice, please don't expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. I will guide us as we begin, and then we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Return to breath. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sound. And the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. Most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us, or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. he began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice, free. It's sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, say, and do every moment of your life. This is what the Buddha called karma. This is your action. This is what you bring into the world. These are your thoughts, your words, and your physical action. And this practice is learning to become mindful and aware of that. But at the same time, understanding that moral and ethical behavior is incredibly important. It's a great, many of you know Karmalekshi Somo is a great Tibetan Buddhist nun. Actually, we were emailing the other day. She's taught here for years, 7-8 years. Also a professor at USD. And this is her last year teaching, so she'll be moving back permanently to Hawaii to continue running the Buddhist center they have there. But years ago, she gave a talk, and she said she was talking about the mindfulness movement that has taken over these Western worlds, and how Americans specifically seem to be so caught up in mindfulness, mainly because they're afraid to say the word Buddhism, but that's a whole other topic. And she said you could mindfully rob a bank. You could mindfully kill somebody. Mindfulness without moral, ethical behavior is not Buddhist practice. So this practice is often we come to it for meditation, for stress, for anxiety, for the crazy busy mind that won't leave us alone. But I believe what the Buddha really wanted us to do was to use these teachings as a mirror, to reflect back on ourselves and become aware of what we think, what we say, and what we do. Because our actions, our thoughts, our words, our deeds, that's what creates the craziness and the stress and the drama and the headaches. It's not anybody else's fault, as much as we'd like to think it is. Doesn't mean others don't do things that are harmful and difficult and challenging. But it's our reaction to those things that allows us to live with a peaceful mind and a peaceful heart, or allows us to live with an angry mind and an angry heart. Nobody controls that but you. And that can be very scary or liberating, depends on how you look at it. The scary part is it's often very different from what we have spent most of our lives thinking, that we must have something or someone else to bring this happiness and joy into our lives. But the liberating part of this path is to recognize that your happiness and your peace of mind is not contingent upon anyone else or anything else. And that is not suggesting that you can't or shouldn't have wonderful people and things in your lives. But when we are relying on everything and everyone external to us to provide a sense of joy and happiness, then we're missing, I think, the heart of this practice, which is getting to know yourselves. And how fun is it to get to know yourself? Wasn't fun for me, that's for sure. Maybe it was a joy for all of you, I don't know. But yeah. When you don't like yourself for so long, and then you have to get to know that person. I mean, how many of you meet somebody that you don't like and say, I can't wait to hang out with that person again? You know? You have a new colleague, or I don't know, a new classmate, or a new someone in your life, and the first time you meet them, you're like, I just don't like that person. That usually doesn't drive you to sit down and have tea with them every single day. But when that person is yourself, you're kind of stuck. Because no matter where you run to, there you are. So, now I'm not suggesting all of you don't like yourselves. But if you are someone who is in that boat, which 20 years of doing this stuff tells me that's a big reason a lot of people show up to this stuff, is they're not so content and pleased and pleasant and settled with the person that they're sitting with right now. So, as Shunryu Suzuki, one of my favorite quotes, he built the San Francisco Zen Center, for me, very much one of my greatest teachers, and someone I think I've learned the most from. He said, you're all perfect exactly how you are. And you all could use a little improvement. And I think that's a very beautiful reminder for us as we go on this journey. So with that, I'll pause. And for me, really always just prefer to respond to questions around Buddhist practice, meditation, anything you're sitting with. And we use the rest of our brief time, and I'll respond to what's on your mind. And again, for those who are joining virtually, welcome. There is a chat box there, as you see somewhere on your screen. Feel free, if you have some questions, type them there, and I'll do my best to respond. So questions, Buddhist practice, meditation, anything you're sitting with. Yeah.
Speaking of what we were just talking about, getting to know yourself, the technique of being the observer and knowing that you want your thoughts, you want your emotions, and trying to separate yourself by degrees. Obviously, it's not going to happen 100% the same from your ego. Because it seems that the ego is something that is just not something you can completely separate yourself from. That being said, sometimes I practice that and I have a feeling of dissociation. And it can be very alarming. You don't need to be good, but just the thought on that technique of being the observer and trying to separate yourself from yourself.
Yeah, so the question, just to repeat for those virtually who didn't hear it, and I'll paraphrase it, but in essence, the practice of being the observer of your thoughts and working on separating yourself from your thoughts, knowing that you are not your thoughts. I don't think you said that, but I added that part. And sometimes you feel did you say disassociation or?
Yeah, separation.
Separation. That's kind of your question, right? Or just your thoughts. And what's that practice like? So, real simple. I'm going to make this really easy for you. Now, unfortunately, Tom's known me for too many years to know that I'm not going to say anything that's simple right now. All you have to do is recognize, and this is it, you have to do one thing. It's like City Slickers. Anyone remember that movie, City Slickers? He says you got to do what? Curly, his name. Just one thing. If you haven't seen the movie, great movie, Billy Crystal, watch the movie. He'll tell you the one thing that's the secret to life. Don't give it away. You just have to recognize, you, Tom, have to recognize there is no self to separate from. So the problem arises when you begin to think that there is a self that you must separate from. That's it. My pleasure. I aim to serve Tom. But, I was going to say in all seriousness, but that's my real answer, okay? To the best of my ability.
It's the wrapping my mind around it.
But there's the thing.
Right.
I am trying to wrap the Buddha taught in the Surangama Sutra, there is no mind to be found. So in that sentence you just spoke, you said I, there is no I, my, there is no my, and mind, there is no mind. So you are trying to wrap yourself or your mind around what I just said. Impossible.
That's why it could be just kind of alarming.
It's very alarming.
What's going on here?
So easy. One more thought on that, and then I'll. In another suggestion, in case you can't, achieve that first part, is to recognize that, and this is where it can get dangerous. So I'll just throw this out there, not just for you, but for anybody really, that often we hear people share this idea of separating ourselves from our thoughts, being the observer, that those thoughts are not me. You can hear it said a number of different ways from a number of different, all of us unenlightened people, trying to tell you all to just watch your thoughts. But what can happen if you're not careful, if you do have some disassociation and you think, well, those thoughts are not me. From a psychiatric, psychological standpoint, you got to be very careful there. Because then you can say, well, that's not me. That person who just robbed that bank, that wasn't me. Those aren't my thoughts. I'm just, this empty Buddhist person over here, and there's some other me robbing that bank. Potentially dangerous. Yeah, go ahead, because you seem chomping at the bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had this question for a while.
Okay, hang on. Are you about to comment on that? Okay, then hang on to that question for a second. I thought you wanted to add to that. Let me finish this before we go there. Hold that thought. So we want to be very careful about that disconnection, which is kind of, again, I'm not sure what words you're using, but if we're going to observe our thoughts, I caution you to recognize those are your thoughts. You created them. That same you that doesn't exist is also the same you that created them. Heart Sutra. No suffering, no cause of suffering, no cessation of suffering, and no path, no wisdom or any attainment. So I just wanted to clarify that for you. Yeah, please.
So I've had this question a while.
Yeah.
So say like we have someone who's doing something that's actually not good.
Okay.
For them or someone else. What's the balance of, I get two different advice, like let it go and then do the right thing or do something.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the balance is.
Sure. So just to, again, paraphrase for those virtually or anyone who didn't hear it, what your question is, which you say you've had for a while, is that what to do when you have a friend or someone you know or love or whoever it is that's doing something they shouldn't do. Do you let it go, or do you try to kind of get involved or intervene? And what's the balance, right? You ever done any things you shouldn't have done? Come on, this shouldn't take you so long to answer. Have you ever done anything you shouldn't have done? Yeah. No, everybody else. We're all on the same page. We have all done things we shouldn't have done. Have you ever had people tell you you shouldn't do that? Have there been times you listened to them? Have there been times you ignored them? But somehow you want to bring your control, your power, your say over other people that you know and love. It's really painful to watch people we know and love suffer. And very often, we want to get involved because we care for them. And it hurts to watch people suffer. 100%, I'm with you. But everybody makes their own choices. And everybody's on their own journey and their own path. Now, the one kind of asterisk here is obviously, you know, if you're a parent and you have an 8-year-old child, for example, you have a little more control, at least perceived control. But when, you know, you're talking about people that aren't 8 years old, you know, I've been working in recovery environments for 25 years. And that's one of the biggest areas this question comes up the most. How do I watch people I love ruin their lives? And the answer is with compassion and love. Because they are choosing to ruin their life. They are choosing to harm themselves or others. It's not your choice to make. At the real foundation of this is, to me, the Buddhist teachings on non-attachment and not attaching to your expectations or desires to have other people be the way you want them to be, no matter how good it might be for them. That's really hard to do. So you cultivate love, you cultivate compassion, and you're there for them if they want it. Just like I'm sure people were there for you if and when you wanted it. And you choose to either take it or not. It's hard. I wish, like Tom's question, this was an easy answer, but it's not. Yeah. Is that helpful? Good. Other thoughts, questions?
What's with the scary Buddha?
Can you say that louder?
What's with the scary Buddha?
What's with the scary Buddha? That is one of my favorite questions. Although I think in the 15 years that we've had that, the question has never been phrased so perfectly. It's usually what's with the skinny Buddha, what's with that Buddha, who is that? It is kind of scary, especially to kids. You know? So the story of this, Well, I'll answer it directly and I'll tell you the story, also for those who might not know. This Buddha up here is the scary one. He's known as the Emaciated Buddha. So this is Siddhartha Gautama prior to becoming the Buddha, prior to awakening. Do you know the story of the Buddha, the general kind of story? So let me give, for anybody who doesn't know it, kind of a 2-minute version of the life story of the Buddha. Born a prince in India 2,500 years ago, and then this will get to the essence of your question, which is, what is that statue? So 500 years before Christ, Siddhartha Gautama was born. Father was a king. That's what made him a prince. And he was raised, sheltered in this palace. When he was born, they said he would either become a great enlightened being or an incredible king. Well, Father wanted him to be a king, and so they sheltered him. He never saw any pain, suffering, anything. And they never let him leave the palace because they knew he had such a good heart that if he went outside and saw the world, the suffering he would experience would be too deep for him to take over as a king. So 29 years old, he sneaks out in the middle of the night with his buddy, and he sees, this actually happens over 4 times, but for the sake of the story, he sees what's called the 4 sights in Buddhist teachings. He sees old age, sickness, death, and an ascetic, like a nun or a monk, just a simple kind of yogi type person. And he said to his buddy Chana, he said, what is this old age, sickness, and death? Does this happen to all of us? And Chana said, yes, my lord. It happens to all of us. We all age, we all get sick, and we all die. That's a newsflash in case any of you haven't figured that out yet. Okay? It's coming to all of us. We cannot escape that. And then he saw the ascetic. And he went back and he realized, well, how could I live my life with all the wealth, all the riches, all the women, he had everything. You're a prince in India 2,500 years ago. You got it all. And he said, I can't live this way when I know that now that there's a world out there that's suffering. Again, he's 29 at this point. So he leaves home. He roams the base of the Himalayan mountains for 6 years. And at this time, the practice in India, as they were Hindu, and the Yogi practice is kind of what was prevalent there. They thought that the way to overcome suffering and to overcome the cycle of rebirth was to overcome attachment to the physical body. So they did crazy yogi things like stand on one leg for weeks at a time or hang from a tree for weeks at a time. And it's said that they ate 1 grain of rice a day. So they say that he was so skinny that you could take your fingers, one in the front, one in the back, and they would touch through the stomach. So then he came to a riverbed, and he's traveling with five buddies. And comes to a river, and there's someone there, a woman's offering food. And he's hungry. And they all said, no, we can't eat. And he said, well, I'm hungry. So he took the bowl of porridge, kanji, and set it in the stream. And he said, if this bowl goes against the stream, I'm going to eat. So he puts it in the stream, it goes against the stream, he decides to eat. His other buddies, they left him. They called him a sellout, a food eater, traitor, they're yelling at him. They take off. He goes off on his own. He regained his physical strength. And at this point of the story is the teaching of the middle path. Right? You have any areas of your life that you live in excess? Physical, mental, or emotional. Areas of your life that you live in complete, extreme, unhealthy manners. This was the Buddha at that time, Siddhartha, completely extreme this way. So let's come back to the middle path, finding a balance in your life. We'll touch on that later. So he regains his physical strength. He continues roaming, and at 35 years old, he sits under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, India, and doesn't move for 21 days. He does what they call neutralize his karma. He began to understand the nature of his own mind, his thoughts, his words, his action, as I addressed the meditation, without you knowing it, so don't tell anyone. And then these 5 guys come over. And if you look above the exit sign up there, there's a kind of tapestry on the wall. And that's the Buddha at 35 giving the first teaching to those same 5 guys that left him. They saw him and they said, there's Siddhartha. Let's go sit with him. It looks like he's figured something out. And he sits down, he teaches the Four Noble Truths. And he's in what's called the first turning of the Dharma, first turning of the Dharma wheel, a Dharma Chakra Mudra. And it's the first time that he taught the Four Noble Truths. Life is filled with suffering. Doesn't mean all life sucks. It just means we experience tremendous amount of pain, trauma, some serious pain and trauma, and some little stuff like we don't like the sandwich we just ate. He understood the second noble truth, which is the cause. Our greed, our anger, our ignorance, called the three poisons. We overcome that with generosity, compassion, wisdom. The third noble truth is the ending of suffering. Liberation, nirvana. And the fourth noble truth is the path. Eightfold path. All the stuff's on Google for free. He understood that the Eightfold Path, as he taught, is having the correct views, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. This is how you live your life. So this is what he taught at that moment. And they said, wow, you are enlightened. You figured out how to overcome the nature of your own mind, the suffering in your own mind, I should say. So they called him the Buddha, the awakened one. He continues on for 45 years, and at 80, he dies. Buddhism goes south, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia. 200 years later, goes up to China, Japan, Korea, Northern Asia. 1,000 years after he died, it went into Tibet. And about 100 years ago-ish, it makes its way west, US, Canada, Europe. So why that statue? When we started Dharma Bum Temple 15 years ago, we're not Buddhas. We're not fully awakened beings. We're not even partially awakened beings. We were young fools. Now we're just older fools who were physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually near death, just like he was. And when we saw that statue 15 plus years ago at the old Buddha for You, we said that's the statue we want because it represents who we are as practitioners. Instead of sitting with this fully enlightened Buddhist statue as if it's something we're trying to achieve, we sit with the unenlightened one because that unenlightened nature is what we have to get to know. That's the pain, that's the suffering. So that's how it became the statue for the Dharma Bum Temple. And then we moved here 5 years ago, and about 4 years ago we were gifted the set of the Kuan Yin statue, which is the Bodhisattva of Compassion, the big one in the middle. Because we all know what this world needs is more compassion. And then you have Manjushri and Samantabhadra. This is great Bodhisattva of wisdom, and that's great Bodhisattva of diligence and practice. So that's the scary Buddha. I love the fact that you called it scary because what it really is, that's us. Our minds. And what do we often focus on? Our appearance. So, thank you for the question. We'll do one more before we close. Yeah, the middle path, especially for lay people, I mean, for all people, even on a monastic path, monks or nuns, the middle path is important to find in your life because a lot of the suffering that we experience comes from these extremes that we tend to live in, physically, mentally, or emotionally. So finding a balance is super important. Any other final question, thought? Well, I'll leave you all with this practice on the middle path. For those who haven't heard it before, many of you have heard it. I'll give you 2 practices to work on. Who here has a lot of shirts? I've done this with you before, haven't I? Or maybe you just raise your hand every time I ask that question. Yeah. How many shirts do you have?
I don't know.
That many?
It's a lot.
That's a lot. More than 50?
My wife says yes.
I should just look this way for the answer. More than 75? 100? No, somewhere between 50 and 75. All right, and they're nice, like, you know, they got the collar and the buttons and everything. They're nice ones. All kinds. Okay. Let's just stick with the nice ones to make it easy, right? So let's just say for, you know, I don't want to overshoot this. Let's just say you have 40 nice button-down collared shirts, right? Could you live if you only had 30 of them? Sure. Maybe not happily, but you could live, right? So the challenge would be to recognize if you have 40 shirts, and everybody can play along, because I guarantee there's somebody in this room that has more than 40 shirts, right? So it's not about the numbers, it's recognizing how much you have. If you have 40 shirts, there are 10 people out there that would love 10 of your really nice shirts. If you gave away 10 of those 40, you would still have 30. And you'd still look pretty good. Now the challenge is the mind, maybe not your mind, but I know what my mind did with this practice, is I would then look at my 40 shirts and I would pick my least 10 favorites. There. The one that still has the tag, the one you haven't worn, you know, it doesn't fit well anymore, you gained 15 pounds since you bought it, whatever. You're like, someday I'm going to fit into this. You know, you're still holding on to it. When we give some things away, we begin to recognize how attached we are to things. That attachment causes our suffering. Giving away a few shirts isn't going to ruin your life, but the attachment we have to real big things in our lives, people, that does cause tremendous pain when we lose them. This is a way to begin to practice that. Right? So that's one way to practice. The second way is next time you go for a meal, okay? And I'll close with this thought. Sit down. Have the, you know, whoever, if they present you with a menu or whatever it is, whether you've been there before, it's your first time, and in your mind, have an idea of how much you want to spend on that meal. Maybe it's $10, maybe it's $20, whatever it is. And when the person comes over to take your order, say, please bring me anything on the menu for $15 that's gluten-free or vegetarian or whatever dietary restrictions. I'm not trying to poison or kill anybody here, right? If you're allergic to peanuts, you know, no peanuts. So put those things in there and say, bring me anything that's no peanuts, gluten-free, and $15. And they're going to look at you kind of funny. And then you have to ask again and convince them like 4 times that it's okay. Allergies, take those away. And then when they bring you food, what are you going to do? Just eat. Why? Because we're fortunate enough to have that money to order food and appreciate the fact that we can eat. And what this cuts into, talking about our sense of self, this cuts into our pride, our ego, our sense of entitlement that's all wrapped up in the whole experience of dining, which says, I earned this money, I have a right to get what I want. In that statement right there is why we suffer. Three miles from here, there's about 15,000 people living on the streets that are homeless and have nothing to eat. Try to experience just appreciating eating. It's a beautiful practice. Monastery life, you eat what's in front of you. At the Buddha's time, when they went every morning, 1 meal a day, they went begging for alms. Every morning they'd go out, they put their head down, they put a bowl up, they went door to door, so to speak. Whatever got put in the bowl, they ate. I'm not suggesting you do this all the time. Just try it once. Just to see how hard it is. See how hard it is to give away shirts you don't need and how hard it is to actually just eat a meal that you didn't pick and choose. We often come into this practice because we want to suffer less. If we want to suffer less, we have to begin to put things into our lives that help us understand why we suffer. As opposed to the approach many people take, which is, I want to live my life exactly how I am, but I want Buddhism to make me feel okay for living that way. So, have fun with those. And I always like when you report back. So let me know how the shirt project goes. I'm not always so fortunate to have, the person who signs up for this to have somebody here with them to hold them accountable, but you're stuck now. All right, so we'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to more than 6 million lives that were lost during this pandemic and their family and friends who continue to suffer to this day. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. So a few quick announcements before y'all head out, and thank you. What's your name? Caitlin. Thank you, Caitlin, for the question, because Beth here said, I never get tired of hearing the story of your, in quotes, scary Buddha. So thank you. So Beth is saying thank you. All right. Thanks all for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up this temple 15 years ago, as I alluded to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers. We're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms to hopefully make sense to those of you who are here. Every night we have different practices going on, different folks leading a different Buddhist tradition. We have a huge recovery sangha, so anybody battling drugs, alcohol, any addiction, that meets a couple times a week as well. Our family sangha for parents, kids, toddlers, teens, that meets once a month. So everything's on the website, and there's a day silence retreat once a month. So if 20 minutes of silence isn't enough torture for you, you can do it for 4 hours. It's phenomenal. And we will gather outside. There's some regulars that will be out front to help sweep and garden and clean up a little bit. So if you want to stick around and help take care of the space, that's great. There's also a list by the door, just some basic cleaning tasks, wipe down, things like that, take out trash, whatever it might be. So we have no cleaning crew. There's nobody comes in at midnight to clean this place. So it's our temple to take care of. So thank you all for being here. Buddha for You also is downstairs if you need anything. So funny how we ended up with the place that we got the statue from, but here we are. So thanks all.
Thank you.